On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, day 222. The IDF is expanding its operations in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, issuing new evacuation orders to Palestinian civilians around Gaza City. Substantial fighting reported in the southeastern parts of Rafah. Eyewitnesses report IDF tanks advancing westward. The Rafah crossing remains closed as Egypt continues to refuse to negotiate with Israel over its opening, leading to substantial decrease in the entrance of humanitarian aid. Major escalations between Israel and Hezbollah. Israeli civilian killed by Hezbollah missile as the IDF assassinates a prominent Hezbollah field commander. Hezbollah fired close to 100 rockets and missiles in response. Political upheaval in Israel. Defense Minister Gallant warns against the lack of day-after planning, leading to a de facto IDF military government in Gaza, and calls to bring in Palestinian actors to govern the Strip. Netanyahu in turn orders measures aimed at leading to the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. Hello everyone, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the latest highlights of the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of May 15th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of May 16th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, there have been no new developments with regards to hostage negotiations in the last several days. On May 14th, the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed Thani stated that negotiations are at a complete stalemate, adding that the IDF's invasion of Rafah has turned the dial backwards with regards to negotiations. He stated that there are fundamental differences between the positions of Israel and Hamas, adding, and I quote, "There is one side that wants to end the war and then talk about hostage exchange, and another side that wants the hostage exchange and then the war to continue. As long as there is no common ground, there will be no outcome," end quote. He added that Qatar will continue to serve as negotiator between the sides, and also stated that Hamas's offices will remain in Doha as long as the war continues and there is need for Qatar's negotiations. With that, Qatar is positioning itself again as a negotiator within the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Until now, Qatar has been the main negotiator, but in the last month, Qatar was more phased out by Israel and Egypt took the front line. Qatar has been reported to want to again get involved in the negotiations, and this also positions it in a position of strength with regards to Hamas, saying you can stay within the country as long as negotiations continue. Moving on to the Gaza Strip, there were barrages of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel in the last several days. On May 14th, a barrage of 5 rockets was fired from Gaza, targeting the areas of Sderot. On May 15th, rockets were fired towards the areas of Sderot, Kerem Shalom, as well as Ivim, Nir Am, and Netiv Asara. Several of these rockets were intercepted, and some of them caused damage in the area of Sderot. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, there were very intensive gun battles that were reported in the areas of the Jabalia refugee camp in the last 2 days, as the IDF has expanded its activities throughout that entire region. Airstrikes were also reported alongside the battles, targeting different Hamas infrastructure. Al-Qassam Brigade stated that they carried out several attacks targeting IDF tanks with Yasin 105 missiles, publishing videos showing these attacks and showing several of these tanks that were damaged. On May 15th, there were substantial bombardments that were reported throughout Jabalia, including both airstrikes and artillery fire. Some reports stated that the rockets that were fired towards Sderot throughout the last 24 hours were fired from Jabalia, reportedly 150 meters from where the IDF forces were located. I will say this appears to be a new tactic of Hamas that actually fires its rockets from a launching site as the IDF is approaching rather than having that launching site destroyed. Again, that is an estimate at this point. It has just been reported several times that as the IDF approached a launching site in the northern parts of the Strip, all the rockets were fired from that launching site towards the neighboring areas within Israel. Other news related to the northern parts of the Strip. On May 14th, the IDF signaled its intent to expand the ongoing operations in northern Gaza, issuing new evacuation orders to Palestinians in the regions. According to the evacuation orders of the IDF, civilians in the areas of El Karame, Slatin, and El Zuhur were ordered to evacuate south towards the areas of Deir el-Balah. There have been no reports about the IDF actually expanding its ground offensive there yet. However, the IDF did order the evacuation of Zaytun and Jabalia refugee camp and then launched the operation there within 2 to 3 days after, so likely we will see that expansion in the coming days. In addition to this, on May 15th, the IDF announced the completion of its operation in Zaytun. This is in the southern areas of Gaza City. The operation began on May 9th and involved intensive gun battles and numerous airstrikes. In addition to uncovering substantial weaponry, the IDF reported destroying a rocket manufacturing site in the region. Zaytun was the first of the latest round that the IDF is carrying out. These operations in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip started in Zaytun, then moved on to Jabalia refugee camp, then these other areas. That operation in Zaytun lasted just over a week, and now, according to reports, it is coming to completion. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, the IDF announced on May 15th that it attacked the Hamas command center that had been established in an UNRWA school in the Al-Nuseirat refugee camp in the central parts of the Strip. These are some of the pictures that emerged from the scene, with the IDF reporting that 15 armed operatives were killed in this attack, 10 of whom were Hamas members. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, substantial gun battles were reported near the Rafah crossing on May 14th. Eyewitnesses reported also that the IDF tanks were advancing further westward within the eastern parts of the city, invading the neighborhoods of El Janaina, As-Salam, as well as El Brazil. Al Arabiya gave an unconfirmed report stating that IDF tanks were already headed towards the heart of Rafah on May 14th. Again, that was only reported in Al Arabiya and nowhere else, so likely what they saw was the IDF tanks moving westward, not actually going to the heart of Rafah. However, that report did come out, so I am giving it. In addition, like in Jabalia refugee camp, the Al-Qassam brigade stated that they attacked IDF bulldozers and tanks with Yasin 105 missiles in the areas of Al-Salam neighborhood in the eastern parts of Rafah, publishing again videos showing these attacks. On May 15th, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an interview to CNBC and somewhat implied that the Rafah invasion is to some extent already underway and is being implemented gradually rather than the full-out invasion. Responding to a question about a full-scale invasion, will it happen, he stated that the operation is being done step-by-step responsibly, adding that it will take several weeks for the operation to fully develop within Rafah. Amidst this, and regarding the civilian situation in Rafah, on May 14th and May 15th, UNRWA reported that over 600,000 Palestinian civilians have already evacuated the areas of Rafah in response to the ongoing invasion that is going on in the eastern parts of the city. Again, this may mean that what the IDF is trying to do is, instead of carrying out a mass evacuation that would take itself 2 or 3 weeks, and then only carry out an invasion, the IDF is actually already involved in the invasion, but only doing it incrementally in stages, first invading the eastern parts of the city and then waiting for the civilians in the other parts of the city to, on their own initiative, start evacuating in response to realizing that fighting is going to advance. And then this is actually the invasion the IDF is carrying out, only in stages. Again, a lot of that is speculation, but I am basing it off the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu already said that the invasion is going to happen in stages. Regarding casualties, 1 IDF soldier was reported killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 48 hours, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 273. 38 IDF soldiers reported injured in the Gaza Strip since my last report, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 1,712. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 142 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 48 hours, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 35,233. 79,141 Palestinians were reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, on May 14th, the IDF published a video showing Hamas operatives within the UNRWA compound in Rafah. The operatives are seen around the UN vehicles before carrying out a shooting attack from within the compound that is used mainly as a logistical zone for humanitarian aid distribution. The IDF noted in publishing this video that Hamas is using the UN compounds and the UNRWA compounds in order to carry out terror attacks, and this is one of the reasons that it is much harder to allow humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip. In addition to this, on May 14th, there were continued diplomatic blows between Israel and Egypt with regards to the Rafah crossing. Israel stated that the country is trying to coordinate the opening of the crossing that it took over in the last week to allow aid to come in from Egypt, however, that Egypt is refusing this coordination. Egypt has stated that the crossing has been closed due to the Israeli escalations and that the situation is too dangerous to allow aid trucks to come in through the Rafah crossing. This comes amidst reports that Egypt is furious with Israel over the Rafah invasion, which reportedly Egypt was only informed about hours before it began. With this, the Rafah crossing remains closed in the last week. There were no reports about how many aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip in the last several days. The last report came out on May 12th, and it said a total of 64 aid trucks entered the Gaza Strip carrying food, water, and medical supplies on May 12th. With that is a substantial decrease in the entrance of aid into the Gaza Strip. Amidst this tension between Israel and Egypt, the IDF general Rassan Alon, who is the coordinator of IDF activity in the Palestinian territories, arrived in Egypt on May 15th. Reportedly, he's having meetings with Egypt, trying to smooth things over with regards to these tensions. Amidst these reports of hardships in allowing humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip, it was reported on May 15th that the floating pier that the United States has been constructing is complete and is going to become operational already on Friday. The way this pier is going to work, the humanitarian aid is going to be loaded in Cyprus and inspected by Israeli officials prior to being loaded. That aid itself is going to be donated largely by the United Arab Emirates. Then it is going to travel on ships to the floating pier, where it is going to be unloaded and travel in smaller ships towards the shores of Gaza. The shores of Gaza are going to be secured by the IDF. On the shores of Gaza, it is going to be received by the World Food Program, and from there the distribution is going to happen within the Gaza Strip. All this is being done under the auspices of the United States. However, there's going to be no U.S. troops that are actually touching ground on Gaza. They're all going to be in the sea and on this floating pier. According to reports, this is supposed to start operating on Friday, and is supposed to allow aid to flow directly into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Other humanitarian news. The Red Cross announced on May 15th the establishment of a new field hospital in the Gaza Strip. The hospital has reportedly 60 beds and is going to be able to treat 200 people per day. It is important to note that this is only a small fraction of the amount of people that are treated in different hospitals in the Gaza Strip. It was also not reported specifically where this hospital is being established, if it is in the central parts of the Gaza Strip or the southern parts. Moving on to the West Bank, there was an attempted Palestinian attack that occurred on May 15th. A Palestinian approached police officers in East Jerusalem and tried to stab them. He was reportedly shot and killed. Regarding IDF activity in the last several days, there was substantial IDF activity that was reported in the areas of Tulkarem, where major confrontations erupted between Palestinian militants and the IDF. 3 Palestinians were reported killed in these gun battles. There were no injuries of the IDF soldiers. In addition to this, IDF activity was also reported in the areas of Bethlehem, Al-Bireh, Jenin, Nablus, Tubas, Hebron, Jericho, and Kalkilia. The IDF reported that on May 15th, in that one day, 10 Palestinians were arrested throughout the West Bank. In addition to this, on May 14th, Israeli right-wing activists attacked a Palestinian truck in the West Bank on suspicion that the truck was part of an aid convoy that was ferrying aid from Jordan towards the Gaza Strip. Tires were torched along the street in order to stop the truck. The driver was attacked and the truck was vandalized and eventually torched. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there were substantial escalations in the barrages between Hezbollah and the IDF in the last 48 hours. On May 14th, the barrage of rockets were fired by Hezbollah, causing major fires to break out in the northern parts of Israel between Malachia and Dishon. In addition, barrages of 10 rockets were fired towards the areas of the Hermon, Majd al-Shams, and there were repeated barrages towards the areas of Arab al-Ramshe, Ya'ara, Goren, and Alon. Anti-tank missiles were also fired towards Kibbutz Adamit, killing 1 Israeli civilian and injuring 5 IDF soldiers. Another civilian was also injured from an anti-tank missile that was fired towards Metula. In addition, barrages of anti-tank missiles were also fired towards the areas of Avivim, causing major damage to farm area. In addition to this, Hezbollah also claimed several border incidents, as well as downing an IDF surveillance balloon that was intercepted above Lebanon. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for this interception, and the IDF also confirmed this. Al-Mayadin reported that the Lebanese military recovered the camera that was on board. Responding to these escalations, on May 14th, the IDF carried out an assassination of a Hezbollah field commander in the area of Tzur. Pictures emerged from the scene showing a car on fire, and reports emerged and were later confirmed that among the dead were Hassan Ibrahim Maki, who is a senior Hezbollah field commander in charge of the southern front of Hezbollah, as well as his bodyguard. Al-Arabiya reported that 3 people were killed in the attack, although no statements were made with regards to who the third casualty might be. In addition to this, the IDF carried out several rounds of attacks throughout southern Lebanon on May 14th. As the cycle continued, responding to the assassination of Ibrahim Hassan Maki, Hezbollah carried out major escalations on May 15th. Drone attacks were carried out in the areas of Tiberias. This is one of the most southern areas that Hezbollah has attacked in the war. Hezbollah claimed that the attack was specifically targeting the Ilania base near Tiberias. The IDF confirmed that a drone crashed in the area and a fire broke out, however did not state where that attack actually occurred. Moments before recording this, the IDF did confirm that a base was attacked near Tiberias, so likely that was that attack. In addition to this, Hezbollah fired a barrage of over 60 rockets throughout the day, stating that these are specifically in response to that assassination. Rockets also targeted the areas of the Meron Air Force Base in northern Israel. Reportedly, these included Burstein missiles that were fired. Other Burstein missiles were also fired towards areas of the IDF's Bir outposts, and rockets also targeted the areas of Shlomi, Batzat, and Rosh Nikra. On May 15th, the IDF also responded with continuous escalations. Responding to the drone attack in Tiberias area, IDF carried out a major attack deep in the heart of Lebanon in the areas of Baalbek. This is some 82 kilometers north of the Israeli border. Alon reported at least 14 missiles were fired in the areas of Nabishith and the Bekaa Valley. Early in the day, the IDF also reported attacking Hezbollah infrastructure belonging to the Radwan force, that is Hezbollah's main commando units, in the Jabal Razlan area, and a military structure was also attacked in the Bleda village. With all these retaliations, Hezbollah claimed more operatives that were killed, bringing the total number of operatives that Hezbollah states were killed in the war to 299. Other news regarding the northern front of Israel and southern front of Lebanon: amidst the reports of negotiations that may lead to a de-escalation, the Israeli government extended the deal that it has with hotels that are housing internally displaced Israeli civilians from northern Israel. The hotels are now under contract to continue housing people until the end of 2024, which gives us some indication for where Israel sees the situation continuing at least until that time period. In addition to this, on May 15th, there was a meeting that was held between the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, and Khalil al-Hayya, who is the Hamas deputy of Yahya Sinwar. The delegations reportedly discussed the recent developments and also gave attention to the supporting fronts, specifically noting that what they are referring to are the ongoing student protests that are in support of the Palestinian cause throughout the world. Moving on to the political developments from the last 48 hours, the International Court of Justice announced that it is due to convene on Thursday and Friday in order to discuss the emergency injunctions that South Africa has requested be leveled against Israel. Turkey and, importantly, Egypt have also joined the requests, calling upon the court to compel Israel to stop the war. In addition, amidst the crisis between Israel and Egypt, on May 13th it was reported that Egypt is considering lowering the diplomatic relations between its country and Israel, including recalling the Egyptian ambassador from Tel Aviv. Again, that was stated on May 13th. It has not happened yet. Other political news. On May 14th, the White House announced that President Biden would veto a law being advanced in Congress that would compel the administration to not hold up military aid that is transferred to Israel. Amidst this, on that same day, the Biden administration informed Congress that it is planning a new weapons sale to Israel in the amount of over $1 billion. According to a report, the sale includes $700 million of tank ammunitions, and the rest involves tactical armored vehicles and mortars. Responding to questions about prior holdups of weapons shipments, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan stated that the United States continues to send military aid towards Israel, but that the bombs weighing 900 kilos were held up, since, quote, "we do not believe they should be used in densely populated areas." Amidst this, the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is due to travel to the Middle East on the weekend. Beginning his tour in Saudi Arabia, he's then going to travel to Israel. According to reports, he's making a last-ditch effort to try to promote the Saudi normalization deal between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, and he's also going to have meetings in Israel surrounding the Rafah invasion. Moving on to the future of the Gaza Strip, on May 15th, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant issued a press release that stirred massive controversy within Israel. Challenging Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu's lack of decision-making with regard to the future of the Gaza Strip, Gallant stated that he has demanded a concrete discussion about the day-after plan since the war began in cabinet and has continuously been refused, stating, and I quote, "A lack of decision-making means a de facto decision, a dangerous trend towards developing a military government and Israeli civilian control of the Gaza Strip. If there is no alternative to Hamas, there will only be two options: Hamas or an Israeli military regime. Both options are bad." Continuing to call for an alternative administration to be established in the Gaza Strip, he stated, again I quote, "The end of a military campaign must be a political move. The day after Hamas will only be achieved after Palestinian actors, accompanied by international actors, have control of the Strip. This is above all an Israeli interest." Gallant also continued and he called upon Netanyahu to, quote, "make a decision and declare publicly that Israel will not govern the Gaza Strip's civilian life, that there will not be an IDF military government in Gaza, and to immediately advance an administrative alternative to Hamas. Gallant also stated that he will not be part of a government that is going to establish an IDF effective occupation within the Gaza Strip. With this, Defense Minister Gallant is the first to publicly state that unless a different trajectory is developed, there will de facto be an Israeli occupation and IDF control of the Gaza Strip in the foreseeable future, and he called upon transferring control of the Gaza Strip to Palestinian elements. The response in the political establishment in Israel were extreme. Several ministers, including National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, and Communication Minister from the Likud Shlomo Karhi, all of whom had participated in a large rally on Tuesday calling for the re-establishment of settlements in the Gaza Strip, issued vast condemnations against the statements of Defense Minister Gallant, some calling on Netanyahu to fire him. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu put out a recorded message stating, and I quote, "I am not willing to replace Hamastan with Fatahstan," i.e. replacing Hamas with Fatah, which is a dominant faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He stated that Hamas's destruction is the first condition in any day-after planning, adding, quote, "As long as Hamas remains, no other element will govern the civilian facets of the Gaza Strip. Certainly not the Palestinian Authority. 80% of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, i.e. in the West Bank, support the terrible massacre of October 7th. The Palestinian Authority supports terrorism, educates the terrorism, and funds terrorism." So he is stating that what Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is stating, another Palestinian element has to come into Gaza, effectively that is likely the Palestinian Authority. He is stating no, anyone but the Palestinian Authority. In turn, Minister Gantz, who's a member of the War Cabinet, responding, stating that Gallant speaks the truth, and Gallant also receives support from the head of the opposition in Israel, Yair Lapid. Later in the day, there was a governmental meeting in Israel, and reportedly a lot of the ministers were furious with Defense Minister Gallant for what he stated. The government meeting itself was also focused on the fact that Israel has voted to not honor the Palestinian delegation's upgrade in the United Nations. Among others, in response to the statements by Defense Minister Gallant, the government also decided on a series of measures that are meant to attack the Palestinian Authority, explicitly stating that their aim is to lead to its eventual economic collapse and effectively making it a non-functional body. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu tasked Justice Minister Yariv Levin, as well as the head of Israel's National Security Council, Tzachi Hanegbi, to develop a plan within the next 24 to 48 hours in order to coordinate the different government offices' activity on the matter of attacking the Palestinian Authority in order to lead to its eventual collapse. Again, this is in response to what Defense Minister Gallant has called for, a Palestinian element that will take control of the Gaza Strip. Possibly responding to all this upheaval within Israel, Ismail Haniyeh, the external leader of Hamas, gave a speech later in the day. He stated, and I quote, "Hamas is here to stay, and it will be the one who decides, in cooperation with other Palestinian factions, what happens the day after the war." He added, "Any agreement must include a complete ceasefire, IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, returning the internally displaced and rebuilding, in addition to a hostage exchange." With this, what we're seeing is that on the one hand, there's still no decision in Israel with regards to what will be the future of the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, we are seeing that the international pressure on Israel to actually come to a decision maybe is finally coming to a fold, and it is possibly going to lead to splits within the Israeli government. However, what it is for sure doing is leading to debates within the Israeli government about the day after. Before concluding, I am going to state that I'm going to be traveling in the next week, starting this weekend. I'm not going to have regular reports. If there are any major updates, I will try to upload them before I return. If you find these reports important, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Those are my highlights from the last 48 hours. Thanks for watching.